K. Morris, and you are about to embark on the next Pioneer Knowledge Services Because You Need to Know, a digital resource for you to listen to folks share their experience and knowledge around the field of knowledge management and nonprofit work.
Hallo, ik ben Jort de Vries vanuit Groningen in Nederland. My name is Jort de Vries and I am right now in Groningen, the Netherlands. One of the most interesting things near the place where I am right now is the Afsluitdijk, the giant dike that the Dutch used to close off the inner sea so that we could build more land, which has a lot to do with knowledge and the way it is used actually, and things that we're going to talk about. My most fantastic job experience that I ever had is going to conferences and doing presentations. The field I work in is spatial and environmental planning, and I am currently at work at the University of Groningen and Deltares, which is a Delta advisory company. The absolute best advice that I have ever received was to pick your battles and take it slow. And sometimes I dream about forests.
Tell me more about that one.
The forests?
What kind of forest? What's going on in a forest?
Usually not much. I think it's kind of like a escapist reaction to the buzziness of modern life. Well, I am most inspired when I discover new things, which means people, places, ideas, standpoints, opinions, and also food. Definitely food.
You discover food?
Mm-hmm. New types of food. Can be very inspiring.
Who gave you that advice?
Actually, a lot of people have given me that advice. My parents, my girlfriend, my promoter, my mentor, my karate trainer, like way back in the days. I was like, if so many people give me that advice, and it should be a good one, right?
You would hope so, yeah.
I stay connected to people by sharing things I think they find interesting and I think that they should know.
That's perfect. Tell me about the spatial and environmental planning. Is it like civil engineering?
It's the most comparable thing that for Americans, I think. Civil engineering is mostly, it's engineering. So it's about quantitative straight lines, concrete, building dikes, building roads, etc. Spatial planning, of course, involves a lot of that, but spatial planning is more the policy and governance side of it as well. So how do you really get the most out of space? And as you can imagine, that's not just through protecting it, laying down infrastructure and concrete, but also, for example, developing the things that people find beautiful about them. Basically, aspect of spatial planning that always looks at the Vitruvian Man. I don't know if you know this principle.
Tell me about it.
The principle of the Vitruvian Man basically says that every principle in public life that you make, or if you make a building, or if you make a public space or whatever, it needs to adhere to three things. And that's first, it has to be useful. It has to fulfill its purpose. It has to be durable. It has to, last as long as it can, but it also has to be beautiful. And civil engineering only looks at the useful and durable parts. But if you want to do some planning, then also architecture comes in, and then you also have to look at the beautiful part. That's kind of the idea.
It kind of goes in the same venue or the same route that computer science has gotten to, where now we have the user being the centerpiece of how things should be designed, because you're building it for the consumer versus the other way around. It is a smart way to go, and I have to ask, is it similar to what I see in the literature about smart cities? It sounds like it would be kind of similar, where you're taking other points of view, perspectives, data, instead of just the hard tack like cost and time and materials.
Absolutely. It's definitely the thing. Smart cities is a spatial planning kind of concept. I would definitely describe it as such. However, the smart city is also a lot about involving smart technology, AI, those kind of things, where spatial planning can also just be about, making the perfect playground for a small neighborhood, It's really overarching concept, whereas a lot of planning concepts in general tend to focus only on the city or only on the land. Because in the Netherlands there's so little space and everything is kind of connected, this is all kind of put into one discipline, let's say.
I want to point to something. Forbes, August 18, 2023, published what are smart cities and why do we need them? Talking about that urbanism piece, and this is a quote from that article. Cities everywhere are growing and feeling the strain. Some 55% of the world's population lives in urban areas today, and that number is expected to reach 68% by 2050.
Yeah.
How does spatial planning, and I know you've got a specific focus, you're talking about maritime spatial planning.
That's correct.
Why don't we just draw that comparison from urban and go right into your focus, which is around maritime?
Ooh, that is actually a little bit of a difficult step to make, because in there's a lot of, like, in the academic community, there's a lot of critique on this. A lot of regular spatial planners think marine spatial planning is a little bit less superior in ways, also because there's less lines that you can draw. You can't dedicate every centimeter of the sea. So it's all a bit more vague and a lot less established.
Okay.
But that will of course come in due time. What you see a lot is the spatial planning, which as such not only focus on urban areas, but on the land in general. How can you best develop the land? How you can best use the land, not just for consumers, but for any public purpose. And there's a lot of principles involved there. And what happens a lot is that these planning principles that are used on land are translated directly to sea. And what marine spatial planning as a discipline on itself says is you can't do that, because maritime space is inherently so different from terrestrial space that you cannot try to govern it based on the same principles. Only if there's so many dynamic cycles at sea, think about tides, seasons, think about the thermo underlying streams. There's a lot of different dynamics at work at sea, which is why you have to look at it much more on a system base than on land.
How is that going to benefit anybody?
Right now, the fact that people are looking at this is because it is in crisis. Like, fish stocks are dying out, temperatures of the sea are rising. All of a sudden, we find out that we can't produce enough energy on land, whether that is through drilling or for fossil fuels or through solar, wind, and whatever. So we need more space, and we are branching out at sea because that's the only place where we have space. For example, in the Netherlands, but in America as well. Basically, the point of this is to allocate all the different activities that want to be performed at sea a good place in a way that they still function and work together as a whole, while not completely destroying the ecology.
So could you kind of give me a picture of who are the players in this maritime space? I mean, who are the key interested parties?
The key stakeholders are, of course, governments. They have, to a certain extent, they have responsibility about sea. Up until 12 nautical miles, it's entirely governments, and afterwards you have the exclusive economic zone that countries can also perform economic activities in. And right now in Europe, the biggest players at sea, of course, you have maritime transport, which is huge. Defense is very important. Fishing is getting less and less important.
Why is that? Why?
First of all, fish stocks are depleting, so there's less fish to be caught, because fishing is basically advancing less fast than the rest of the economy. I mean, you catch fish. We kind of perfected the huge trawlers a while ago. You're not going to get more production, only less, because the fish is gone. So it's becoming a smaller and smaller part of the economy, and also techniques for fish farming, other forms of seafood production which can be farmed, like seaweed or crustaceans or oysters or whatever, are also becoming better and better and more dominant. So there's also more produced fish pushing the competition.
The difference between organic fish and just fish that are farmed to eat.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk about how knowledge is handled. What are the attitudes with some of these policymakers and key stakeholders in this spatial relationship? What are some of the attitudes you see in the knowledge flow or development?
Well, in general, spatial planning got me thinking about knowledge and kind of pushed me into knowledge management to begin with, because spatial planning handles knowledge in a very interesting way. As I said, it's not just about urban, it's not just about rural, it's about all the space that there is. And if you want to do a spatial project, you want to integrate it so that all the users come out best, because that's the goal of spatial planning. Everybody puts as little water with the wine as possible. Everybody is mostly happy. Well, fully is never going to happen. But that means that if you're going to build a new dike, then you might as well build a new road on it as well, because it needs replacing, right? Otherwise, you have to reinvest again in 5 years. And if you do that, then we should also integrate that with the new houses we were planning to build in 7 years. Okay, so how are we then going to make sure these houses are connected to all the necessary infrastructure? Are they within so many kilometers of a hospital, which they legally have to be? So what you get is so many sectors have to be involved in this plan in the end, or at least consulted, that spatial planning has a very cross-cutting attitude towards knowledge. That is, I think, that's for me is one of the most interesting things, because you get from multidisciplinary, so several disciplines are involved, to interdisciplinary, do research together, to even transdisciplinary, where research methods and theories are combined from different disciplines to get knowledge which is truly integrated. And that is something that is, especially in marine spatial planning, called for to an even larger degree than on land, mostly because it's so important to look at the sea as a system.
You're not just looking at the sea as a system. You're looking at geography and atmospheric condition. You're looking at the whole enchilada.
Yeah.
I have to ask, in your description of the integration and bringing in all these different avenues, not just a consultancy, but to understand their perspective, things you may not have thought of, trying to understand all the things that need to be understood, sounds like it would take forever.
Oh, yeah. No, it never stops. It's like, so you were
Yep. It's not easy. Yep. Okay.
No, it never stops. It's like you were just talking about the whole enchilada, but that is the biophysical enchilada. And then you also have all the human activities and the social systems tied up into it. And as soon as we change the way that we change the sea, there will be different impacts, and we have to see what happens with that impact, etc., etc., etc. That's one of the biggest issues right now as well. In the North Sea, European Union together is planning to build about 10,000 wind turbines in the coming 20 years before 2050. And they're all as big as the Eiffel Tower. That's the best scenario, because if they're smaller, we're going to need even more. There is so much concrete going into the North Sea. We have no idea what will happen. So yeah, you're going to have to keep on seeing what it does, adapting to that, and kind of modeling through. Yeah, spatial planners always say, like, we would love to do a strategic plan, but in reality, it's always kind of a modeling through situation.
Well, I can see your point to why knowledge and its handling are extremely important. How does AI fit into, because I would have to assume in a lot of this, you're almost at a level of predictability to look at things changed now or recent past and what the outcomes will be 10 years from now, or what the needs will be, or what the issues will be. In that structure, what kind of tool sets are they relying on to help them?
Well, if you look at the physical and ecological scientists, it's mostly modeling right now.
Okay.
Because it's impossible to monitor everything that happens in the sea. And their AI doesn't really have a big role in it yet, simply because humans have not constructed models which are good enough. Basically, the models are still being adapted, scaled up, etc., etc. However, there is a little bit of a callback, like, hey, very nice with all these models, but we do have to keep on monitoring to see whether the models actually work, and that can be done strategically. But the main tool right now, I think, is modeling on the biophysical side. For example, the company that I work for, when we talk about the international planning part, they're making an online compendium in which you can see like a map of the sea, and whichever part of sea you click on, you can kind of see which laws apply to it.
Ooh.
Does any government have any future plan for it? And that is used to align the different marine spatial plans of European countries. There you have the tools for the real scientists and the tools for the planners are different, but they are extended into each other, of course.
You're talking heavily into the realm of academics and people that are scientists, but is there room for economics?
Yes, there is a very, very important need for economics here. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. How does it fit in? Because it seems like there may be odds. There may be opposing forces here.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, economics for me is people talking about value. economics is the reason that we're putting so many offshore wind farms and so many transport ships into the sea to begin with. So the issue is political and economical to begin with. And of course, economics can be used to attach value to certain activities at sea, but there is a big trap there because economics will care a lot less about the ecological values than that they are actually worth. Because if we kill off all the, I don't know, left way swinging yellow fish, I'm not an ecologist, but if we kill all them and we don't know what it does, and then all the dolphins and porpoises die as well, then we're going to be very sad. But right now we simply can't see what it does, if you know what I mean.
Well, and so that brings up a good point. Who's the sheriff? Who is the police of all this stuff, especially in international water? Who's the ruler to make sure things are done right?
In the exclusive economic zone, that is the country whose exclusive economic zone it is. Usually it's some government department, but in international waters, only the UN and NGOs who can, pray for people to stop breaking everything, but they're not going to, basically. Yeah.
Do we have to get to that point? With the predictions of how many more people are going to be on the planet, all consuming stuff, how do we make this important enough that somebody takes charge and starts to enforce anything?
We can't. We simply can't. If you look at how international relations are going now, there is no way to enforce something unless you would have like some advanced global federation which can actually coerce on the seas. But I mean, even if the United States says, hey, China, stop bottom trawling through all the oceans in the world, it's like, are you going to start a nuclear war over ecology? No.
Well, maybe there needs to be a little push there on that front, that maybe people are just lazy in that they don't think that it's enough to worry about. Maybe they think, oh, you know what? By the time that's an issue, I'll be dead and gone. What do I care?
That's true.
Yeah, right? So how do you fight behaviors? Because one of the things that we talked about institutionalism and institutional theory. So let's talk about how behaviors can help to create a new institutional concept, perhaps.
That's a really interesting question, actually, Edwin, because like the first thing that you said, like, is there a possibility for a police officer? There will be a regulative, coercive institution, an actual law that is enforced, which then influences people behavior. However, the only way we can tackle this on a global level would be through a more normative or a more cognitive revolution almost of behavior. The only way to do this is to have actually everybody value the life in the sea and the potential uncertain benefits, and also the actual known certain benefits that it has for us as humans. They have to value that and be willing to protect that. Whether that's possible, I don't know, but just literacy, so people being aware of the important parts that we do know, that is a good first step, I think.
So if we could educate enough people to change consumption behaviors, then the economies will have to be forced to go do something else. If everybody's eating the same fish at mass quantities, then that consumption level and the monetary gain is there. So if we can reduce consumption, then the monetary is not there, and they lose interest.
That could be a way.
Now, I just watched a thing around Mexico. I just watched a documentary about the oyster overconsumption. They do this trawling for oysters and the regulations that have been trying to be enforced. But until there is a sheriff, until there is somebody with some punitive, hey, you know what, that's going to cost you. Is it that hard of a thing to do? Do you really think it's that impossible to have a police force of some sort, policing effort, to help change or thwart bad behavior? I mean, is it totally impossible?
No, it's not. I mean, within the exclusive economic zones, countries and governments are actually, totally allowed to also patrol there and stop people.
Okay.
If you, in the United Nations, make some kind of conference basically make a decision that worldwide this and this type of trawling are now forbidden, and you can attach a task force to that, and everybody agrees, which they're not going to, then that would be possible. Another way would also to be like the shaming that the Discovery Channel whale wars, that kind of stuff,
Yeah, that changes perceptions and it raises awareness and it changes behaviors for people. I totally get that. So I like that very much. Well, it's interesting. And do you feel that knowledge management, in what you perceive of it now, can really change in your domain what you think it can?
I think it can definitely change a lot. Once again, like, I'm no expert on the global oceans, on international waters, and the way that I look at knowledge management, which is usually very much for like maintaining knowledge within an organization and making sure that it doesn't get lost. I really look at how does it get exchanged between organizations, between sectors, disciplines, and my main research is actually about how governments, policymakers, and researchers communicate about knowledge. First of all, traditional knowledge management, if that would be properly applied in the departments that do the policing already in the Netherlands, my God, that would save so much effort already. Because honestly, right now you really see, it's called Rijkswaterstaat, you really see that like these are the guys that built the famous Dutch waterworks, but they're getting old and now a new generation is coming up and they're actually struggling passing up all the knowledge. That is something where traditional knowledge management would help a lot in policing, planning, etc., these waters. But if you look at it in a broader way, that knowledge management can also mean the management of knowledge within like an entire system or within an entire sector or an entire spatial domain, then I think there's a lot more possibilities. Because if you understand why there are certain barriers and certain enablers in the communication about knowledge between whichever organization, then you can start making better processes. And then you can make sure that if a Dutch researcher has a finding, then a Norwegian policymaker will hear about it within a month and they will not have to fund the entire thing themselves, basically.
It shortcuts and creates a synergy that could not any other way happen.
Yeah.
It gives opportunity for connection and action to be short-circuited, if you will, to make it quicker and faster and easier and less costly.
Exactly. Because once again, we know so little about the sea that every little bit of knowledge and experience we have counts.
Exactly, because you don't know what the value of anything is at this point.
Yep.
Your interrelation between this fish and that, and that, you don't know where the chain is connected. Yep. You just don't know. Well, what would you say in your area is the best country that's doing knowledge management, and why?
I think when it comes to applying like the general literacy of knowledge being used in society and thinking about that is Japan, because they've got actual laws about it, which is something else. But when it comes to marine spatial planning, it is actually the Netherlands as far as I know, because there are several programs which are installed based on stakeholder meetings between the fishermen, the transportation people, the offshore wind industry, and different government ministries and departments. They all got together in a very big stakeholder consultancy, actually, and they actually decided from the beginning that the ministries would have to listen.
In that scenario, is the government the key stakeholder that corralled everybody to say, come on, everybody, let's go?
In a way they are, but I'm actually not entirely sure how it got established. But I know that the government had plans and everybody was but a lot of different stakeholders were like, we don't agree. And if we want to invest in stuff, we have to know what you are planning. And then jointly they kind of came to the idea of having these conversations.
A community input on many levels to come to a perfected futuristic state without, I hate to say without bias, because I'm sure there's still bias in that, but still, they tried to do a town hall collection of, okay, everybody, and gave them the option, right? You either come on board or you don't, that's your call, but this is what we're doing, and it's going to affect you one way or the other.
In a way it was. And it was jointly instigated, and for example, at a certain point, the fishermen were not willing to budge, and they actually got out. And yeah, then the rest also said, like, I mean, if you don't want to talk, you don't want to talk. I'm sorry. They're not being diminished entirely, the fishermen, in this conversation, but they do lose a lot of opportunities by not taking place in these talks. And in these talks, actually, knowledge is a very important place, because they have, and it's one of the few bodies as such in the world that has an independent advisory commission of scientists, which can also give advice when they're not asked. Because often in these bodies, they have a discussion and then they don't get to a point, and it's like, hey, let's ask the scientists. But now the scientists are actually able to come in. It's like, hey guys, sounds very good, not rational at all, just get it off the table. And what I often see when it comes to knowledge communication is, like, they make a plan in government and then they go to the scientists like, hey, do the research we need. And then the scientists are like, oh my God.
This is terrible. Yeah, right.
So just involving everybody from the start already, then you prevent that you get on a path, invest money in a path which is just not attainable.
It's not good. Yeah. Well, that just sounds like smart business right there.
Yeah.
Well, what would be your definition of knowledge management?
My definition of knowledge management.
What do you tell people?
Knowledge management is, I would call it a research discipline, which looks at how you can disseminate, maintain, and develop knowledge in the most profitable and efficient manner.
You're the first person that has come up with it as a research discipline. And I think that's a key ingredient. From my experience, I think most organizations look at it as a business application, a business processing application, because that makes the most sense. But I think if you tie in research, there's an economy that's gained, because I think there's a lot of lost money in an organization that spends money on seeking information, knowledge, data, and then 10 years down the road, they do it again. If you had a proper research discipline, which made the individual or team go look first, research first, the internal organizational knowledge, and then make decisions based on what their it's just like doing any research. You got to go look what the literature says, right?
Exactly. Then imagine that on the scale of a government. I mean,
oh my goodness. You're talking crazy talk now. Oh, that's crazy.
No, but it's like the millions that are spent on research that just end up in a drawer, and then 3 years later someone has commissioned someone to do the same research. It is insane, the amount of money and time of very specialized smart people that is lost through just not handling your knowledge properly. So yeah,
that's perfect. That is a perfect concept, and I think we need to push that. I like that very much. Well, thank you very much for being a part of this organizational knowledge exchange. So tell me any last bits of wisdom from your part of the world.
I think the best way you can ensure that you have a similar attitude towards knowledge is by admitting your differences and your similarities. I think that is the most important thing. If you make being different, thinking differently about things being irreconcilable, a taboo, then you're never, ever, ever gonna be able to communicate efficiently without bias. And I think that's a trap a lot of organizations fall for. It's like, no, we have to agree on everything. No, you don't. You can disagree as long as you cooperate.
I like that. That's a t-shirt, by the way. That needs to be on it. Well, thank you very much for being such an interesting guest on today's show.
Oh, thank you very much, Edwin. Thanks for having me. I'm honored.
Thank you for listening to Because You Need to Know, the Reference Podcast in Knowledge Management. My name is Soni Toneme. As an art administrator, Because You Need to Know has been my go-to podcast and has helped me hone my management skills. Please consider sponsoring the podcast with your business.
Just finished our latest Because You Need to Know, a public service of Pioneer Knowledge Services. Please join us on LinkedIn and find us at pioneer-ks.org.